Because what happens is when you're smoking that much weed, your dopamine and serotonin basically gets turned off. So when you remove the weed, you basically give yourself depression. Whilst I had experienced PTSD and anxiety before, I'd never experienced depression, and I wanted to die every day. Every day I woke up sad that I was alive. It was the hardest summer of my life, that summer of 2023, because I was done. I was empty. Hannah was gone.
Hello, friend. Welcome back to the Awakened Entrepreneur Show. I am Juan Galan, your host, and I am so thrilled today because I have a new guest on the podcast. And I've actually been on her podcast as well 2 years ago. Her name is Hannah Power. She's a personal branding coach. She is the founder of Amplify, where she offers different services and offers, and also the host of My Flow podcast. 2 years ago, when she had me on her podcast, we talked about my journey as an Instagram coach. And funny enough, we talked about my recent breakup and how it had affected my business. And today we're going to talk about her journey, her breakup, how it affected her business, but how she overcame that so that we can continue working in our businesses. So hi, Hannah. How are you? I'm so happy you're here today.
So happy to be here, and so nice to have a catch up, having last seen each other 2 years ago, spoken about flow, spoken about your journey, and to be able to be back in this and privileged to be on your podcast.
It's an honor for me to have you on my podcast. I know we've been talking about this for a while, and I actually listened to our episode not too long ago when I was in Peru, because we've been talking about doing this episode for a bit, and I just wanted to listen to where I was 2 years ago, and I was just in shock, of how much I've grown and evolved in 2 years. And I'm sure that you have too. So I can't wait to chat about all of this. But I want to start by addressing one of the things that I really love about your brand is that how you're always talking about being in flow. And I'd love for you to explain, what does this mean? What does being in flow mean?
It's a really good question. And I think that, there are so many different ways I can answer that question. If you think about, if everyone, listening to this, and if you think about it, we know what it feels like to be in flow. If something is just working, right? It's just moving. Things just happen. You think like the waves of a river, right? And then when you're not in flow, things are just not working. You don't feel good. Things are not moving. And I think that I see flow as this very big philosophy, as well as the concept of flow state of you are basically in alignment with the path that you're meant to be on. And because of that, things just work. And I think that, as a society, we're in a very out of flow society as a broader
100%.
society, right? So some people are really pushing and trying to control outcomes and create things that aren't right for them. That's what I call achiever mode. And then there are people on the other side of it who are out of flow because they are procrastinating, distracted, scrolling, talking about doing things, but not doing them. That's what I call dreamer mode. And my goal is to help people to live and work and love in this state of flow, which is what I call performer mode, which is really just you living in alignment with your best self. And by doing that, really creating your dream life. And if we think about flow state which is generally how flow is known online, flow state being this state of deep focus, deep presence where you're doing something that you love that also challenges you. We see it as a moment, when you're, playing the guitar or writing a song, or for an entrepreneur, it might be creating something or speaking on a stage. And the moment of flow state is such a powerful experience. And my goal is to have as much of that in my life. So to live in flow is a broader philosophy of living with ease and living in a state of peaceful progress, but also filling my life with that deep work of presence where I'm really doing the work that excites me, that lights me up, and is really me delivering my purpose to the world.
That's a beautiful explanation. And it's so funny because going back to our conversation 2 years ago, when you interviewed me, I was actually going through a hard time, not only because of the breakup that I had gone through, but in my business, things started to feel stuck. Like I was not in flow. I was definitely not in flow. I was forcing things. I was trying to control outcomes, and things weren't working out. And the reason for that is, and I understood this years later, I wasn't really fulfilling my higher purpose. I was not in alignment with what my soul was called to do. And all of that was causing all that friction. So now I do feel that I'm in flow and things are so different. But I want to ask you, how did you get started in this world of understanding what flow is and helping others with, finding their flow? I'm really curious about that.
Do you know what? So It's a really good question. I would say the journey really started consciously in 18, where I was in Bali. I'd moved to Bali. I'd left the
No
corporate
way.
world and I moved to Bali. I was 25. I'd gone through a big trauma and I didn't know, I had no idea what I was doing or where I was going, what I wanted, what I didn't want. I didn't know anything. I didn't, I just had no idea. I didn't have, I wasn't like, I want to move to Bali and start a business. I had no idea. I just knew I needed to go there and I'd work it out. And
Mm,
I went through a huge amount of healing for a big trauma that I'd been
mm.
through. I quit drinking. I drove my life to the depths. And then when I started to come out from the depths, and I didn't even know I was healing at that time. I didn't know what healing was. I was just suffering and then eventually cried enough that I stopped crying. And I started to question, why are some people successful and why are some people not successful? In Bali, I was coming
Yeah.
across some incredibly successful people, some incredibly unsuccessful people. I knew some very successful people. I knew some very unsuccessful people. And then I went to the next level of that question and started to think about what actually is success.
Yeah.
And that was what really started it. And the flow theory kind of developed from that as I guess as a way of quantifying what did success mean to me. Because to me, when I was looking at what society was defining as success, that wasn't what I was defining as success. Because to me, success was freedom, autonomy, peace, but
Mm-mm.
not having to sacrifice financial success and personal dreams for that. I think we live in a world that sees it as extremes, like either you're successful financially or you have peace.
True. True.
And I really started it there on a mission of, can I create success without the stress? Can I live in a state of, and I didn't use all this language at the time, this is in hindsight, but can I live in a state of true alignment where I am doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing? I'm doing work that I love, work that I'm good at, work that the world needs, and I'm building an amazing life and business that changes my life through changing the lives of others. And I started on that journey of creating that definition of success. And to be honest, when you start on any pursuit, when you decide to play any game, which once you say I've got a dream and I'm going to go after it, you activate a game. And
Mm.
what happens is you then start reaching little monsters and end of level bosses that show you all the challenges you have on the way to that definition of success and that dream. And I would say that I'd already been through some challenge, but I would say that I spent the next 5 years, from 2018 up to 2023, on an absolute boot camp of ass kicking, uncovering
Mm.
every limiting belief, every egoic desire, every fear-based, Satan-created, low vibrational thing that was keeping me from being in that state of flow and that state of success. And I would say that it was at the end of 2023 where, and we can talk about that, where I went through a breakup and a lot of other challenges that came with that. I was struggling with addiction. I had to liquidate my business. I lost my home. There was a lot of different stuff with that, where I was able to essentially let go of everything that was actually keeping me from living in that state of flow, that performer mode. And I shifted into
Mm.
that mode and I started to live in this state of what I call peaceful progress, experiencing success without the stress, living in that state of
Love that.
alignment. And life just started to work. And it's not a case of, you work hard or you don't work hard. It's not, we're so looking in our modern world to find the secret sauce that makes everything work. And
Yeah.
living in perform mode, I do as well as I can to make it as simple and quantifiable and doable as possible. But realistically, if you're going to live in flow, you have to start by clearing every single thing which is keeping you from being in flow. Because
Mm.
God, I believe, and I know you believe, that God has a path and a purpose for us. And when you heal
100%.
your way onto that path, everything starts working.
Mm.
We're so scared to do that work and we so focus on the strategies and the content and the activities and the houses and the jobs and the locations and the flights to try and find this thing that you're never going to find if you are internally blocked. So living in flow is having clarity of where you want to be. Of course, the money you want to make, the impact you want to have, the business you want to build, the house you want to live in, but actually focusing on who that person is, who that version of you is, and showing up every day as if you are already that person. And what's crazy, and you can call it the law of attraction, you can call it God, you can call it whatever. What's crazy is whatever resonates with you. What's crazy is that when you start doing that and you start going, well, actually, that best version of Hannah, that's how she would think, act, feel, behave. How much life
Mm.
suddenly starts working and the flow comes. And then you can let go of the outcome, because you do need to let go of the outcome, because when we
You
try to
do.
control, we often choose things that God just does not want for us.
Hmm.
And or the universe, whatever resonates. I'm really happy for everyone to replace that word with what resonates with them.
Me
And I
too.
think
Same here.
I tried to create outcomes and create results that now I look back and I'm like, thank you, God, for removing that from my life. That was so not what I wanted. And now I try to focus, as I said, on each day and choosing my highest excitement and my flow for that day and trusting Him with the rest. And I've never been more successful. I've never been more financially well off. I've never had more opportunities by not chasing them down. And it's such a shift,
Mm.
but when you make it, it's so unbelievably powerful. And that's why I'm so passionate about this work. And I love having these conversations.
Oh my God, I loved everything you said, and I have so many questions in my head right now for you. But one thing that I want to point out is how funny, how parallel our lives are, where or are in the sense that you went to Bali, and somehow in Bali you went through this healing process. Well, you started your healing process. You said it
Yeah.
lasted like five years. I went to Bali and I started my healing process, and I'm still working on it. I'm still facing a lot of limiting beliefs. I'm still sometimes wanting to control the outcome. Like, I feel that this is something that might not disappear completely, but once you start healing, you start becoming more aware of that and knowing how
Yeah.
to kind of like manage those situations. But I love that you also went to Bali, you went to that process, and that Bali was the place that kind of like showed you what your true purpose was. Same
Yeah.
for me. Now, you mentioned that in 2023 you went through a really dark year, which is funny
Yeah.
because I also went through a really dark year in 2023. And you mentioned that you went through a breakup and you had to liquidate your business. You want to share a little bit more about that? Like, how did that all happen, and how
Yeah.
did the breakup affected your business?
So in 2023, so I've been an entrepreneur by that point for 5 years, and I've been really chasing down these goals, these big goals. And
Mm,
I've been in therapy for a while. What happened for me was I grew up, in this in an entrepreneurial environment with two
okay.
entrepreneurial parents who were real pioneers in the industry. My parents were internet entrepreneurs in the 90s.
Oh, wow.
And they had lots of highs, but lots of lows. We went from having a lot to having basically very little. And I grew up with a lot of like stress in my body. And I then went through different traumas, and which, we can talk about. I had a lot of stress in me. And then when I started I worked in corporate, and I thought, I'm going to go to Bali, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, but I brought all of that with me, right? So what happened was I took that intensity, that outcome controlling, that stress into my work. And what happened is, after a few years of doing that, whilst I had removed alcohol, I started smoking weed, basically, because I was looking for that peace. I was looking for that
Mm,
calm. I was looking to remove that stress, because if you don't deal with the internal stress, you try to escape from it. And I was trying to escape from it. And whilst I was in therapy, there was a huge amount that I needed to clear through. So I started smoking weed and I've got ADHD. I don't know if I have ADHD anymore. I'm kind of out. The jury's out on whether I think you could cure that. I'm kind of shifting what I think about that whole thing now. But the weed really calmed my ADHD, enabled me to focus. And at first it was great, and I took it too far, and I was smoking a huge amount of weed, and it got me. I had when I was smoking a lot of weed, a very impulsive mindset. So I was spending a lot of money in the business. So while I was bringing in a lot of money, I was investing a lot of money, and I was in that dreamer mode that I
mm.
mentioned earlier of ideas and this and chasing this and doing this, and I want to do this, and I built up a lot of debt. And alongside the debt, I realized that I was really addicted to smoking weed. I mean, I was smoking a lot of weed. My brothers still find it crazy how much I was able to put away and still function. I was still pretty high functioning. I mean, some of my best client results were during that time, which is so
Oh my
crazy.
God. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But I mean, I was probably stoned for our interview.
Well, I
Like,
didn't notice it. I
no,
didn't
because
notice
I was
it.
really high functioning on it. But as in, like, yeah, it became an all day thing. Anyway, my family got concerned and they were like, you need to stop smoking. And it took me a few months to come around to that idea. And then I did. And I went cold turkey. And in hindsight, it would have been better if I had gone to some kind of rehabilitation center, because what happens is when you're smoking that much weed, your dopamine and serotonin basically gets turned
Mm,
off. So when you remove the weed, you basically give yourself chronic depression. And whilst I had experienced PTSD and anxiety before, I'd never experienced depression, and I wanted to die every day. Every day I woke up sad that I was alive. It was the
Wow.
hardest summer of my life, that summer of 2023, because I was done. I was empty. Hannah was gone. And I'm glad I went through it, because I have a new understanding of what depression actually feels like. I never understood that. I would never have done anything to myself, because I wouldn't do that to my family, but I had no care that I was, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And my boyfriend at the time he was really good. He really held it together and held me together. But gradually, as it got worse and worse, I couldn't run the business. So the business became insolvent, which, for those listening don't know what that is, it basically means that you owe more than you're bringing in. So because I had this debt, and I wasn't
Mm,
able to, I was still doing a little bit of work, but I wasn't able to match it. So the business became insolvent. So I went into liquidation, which is such a stressful experience. And there
can
was no
imagine.
I made sure that everyone got paid. The only actual debt that got liquidated was mainly tax and some loans to some banks. There was no like individual person that suffered, but the business went into liquidation. Me and my boyfriend, I paid the majority of our bills, because he was a physiotherapist for the NHS, so he didn't make a lot. So we then moved. We then planned to move in with his parents. We then went through. He then proposed to me, changed his mind. So we then went through a big breakup. And
No.
in the space of like 2 weeks, whilst I was recovering mentally from this depression from the weed, I went through a breakup, a liquidation, and I lost my house. And my dog had an accident and was in hospital an hour away from me. And I basically had to ring my brother and be like, can I live on your, he had a sofa bed. Can I come and live on your sofa bed? I would say it's like my third rock bottom. I was 31 years old. I'd worked my ass off. I'd had all that therapy. I had done all this personal development. I'd already done the Bali thing. I'd already written a book. I'd already done all the things that you go and do when you're at rock
Mm.
bottom. So I was like, what the fuck am I going to do?
But
And
now,
yeah, and I was like, all my friends are like getting married and buying houses. And I felt like everyone online was succeeding with their businesses. And I was like, my clients were succeeding. It's just I wasn't. And I woke up on my brother's sofa bed, and I was like, what's going on? I started to feel sorry for myself. I was like, oh, poor me. And I started a journal. And like, this was the time when I found Jesus. And
mm, mm,
I'd started to pray. Like, I used to walk my dog around this, I still do, around this church in Farnham. And like, I didn't really have, I was a universe person, but when it wasn't working, the universe says it doesn't work. Like, I'm doing everything wrong. So I started to basically, when the church was empty, I basically would go in and like beg, like, either kill me or help me, because I can't do this. So if you're real, this is your shot, because I didn't have that relationship with God at the time. It took a little while, and then I moved in, and actually when I started praying, things got worse. So I started praying before the liquidation,
no.
and and then the boyfriend went and all this stuff. I thought, like, fuck you. Like, I've been praying and doing all this stuff, and you're always just getting worse. And my cousin said something very profound. He said that, Hannah, I think that all of that is not meant to be in your life. I think you're burning to the ground what is not meant to be there, to make space for what is. So I held that. And one day when I was on my brother's sofa bed, I came across this picture on Pinterest. And my Pinterest is just like outfits and motivational quotes, right? I came
Yeah.
across this picture, and it's a black and white, and it's Jesus, and he's in like a storm in the sea. And it says, don't look at the storm, look at me. And I just
That's
saw this
the scene
image.
with Peter, no, when he's walking in the
Yes.
water.
But it was just this, like, someone had made it, right? It was just I can show you, it's a beautiful image. And I just looked at this image, and I was like, I felt this feeling of peace that
Mm,
I had never really felt before. And I was at my rock bottom, and I felt this feeling of peace. I was like, oh, I feel good for the first time in a really long time. Like, what is this feeling?
wow.
And I was like, okay, then. So I set this like picture from Pinterest as my phone background, and I just started to communicate with Jesus. And I was filled with this strength to start again, but to start again in a different way. To start again, not from a place of need or escape, or when
Mm,
I get there, then I will, but from a place of flow. And I decided I was going to do this completely differently. I was going to follow the flow. I was going to follow what excited me, what I felt that I loved and I was best at. I was going to fill myself with flow state. And the day after me and my boyfriend broke up, this is actually a very, really viral LinkedIn post for me, one of the ones that really boomed. And the day after my boyfriend and I broke up, I had a speech at Unilever in person in front of 200 accountants, right? To teach them
wow.
personal branding. It was the day after we broke up. And I was at this point, we'd broken up. I was out of the house. The business was going through liquidation. My parents were moving house. So their house was packed up. And my stuff was all in my car. All my stuff was at my ex-boyfriend's parents' house. I was like, right, I have to just pull my shit together and do this speech. And it was actually the first time I launched Amplify. That was the new Amplify branding and all of these things, because I was liquidating the old one and starting again. And
So the old one was also called Amplify?
no, the old business. I was liquidating Hannah Power Limited, which
Oh,
was
wow.
so crazy to liquidate yourself.
I know.
And I stood on this stage and did the speech and taught them about this. And afterwards, I felt incredible. And I was like, oh my gosh, like this flow state stuff, like I feel incredible. I feel free. I feel happy. But I've actually done something positive for my business. Like I've escaped forwards. And I was like, already knew there was power in flow state, but I didn't realize the power of it. So I sort of did flow state plus Jesus. And
Mm.
everything changed. Like everything changed. I went from being at rock bottom to being really at peace and really happy and really like present. And I started to do this and do this. And I started to eat right and started to like, I'd put on a bit of weight. I started to lose weight and my business started working. I got new clients and everything just started to work. And I'm not saying everything has been easy from that point onward. That
Mm.
was like the 31st of October, 2023. I've still reached limiting beliefs that I needed to move through. And I've still had challenges at times, but my internal state has not moved from being in this place of complete peace and presence and trust. And that to me is what it means to live in flow. And that's where I think these personal challenges can knock us all the way down. And if your business is not the right business for you, or your job is not the right business for you, that will also continue to knock you down. But in my situation, because I
100%.
chose the flow, that was what pulled me forward. My business was my life raft, and not in a hustly money making way, but because of the flow, because I was doing what I loved and what I was best at and what I knew would help people. And that's still the choice I make every single day.
Wow, that is such a beautiful testimony. And so you would say that thanks to Jesus, you were able to embody really what flow is, because you said you knew what flow was before, but you weren't really embodying it. And after you found Jesus, it was like something like a switch in your mind, right?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about Jesus, like he is the ultimate, like if we think about dream achiever performer, he is the ultimate like performer moder. He's the ultimate person that lives in flow.
Mm,
Like if we
totally.
he is this like being who he's so calm. He just like he came down to change everything, and like did change everything and still changes everything. But he's like so chilled. He's like, I'm going to pick these disciples and we're basically going to go for a walk and I'm going to sit on this mountain and see what happens. Like,
So
talk about
true.
talk about like inbound magnetic marketing.
I
Do you know what
know,
I
no, no,
mean?
no.
Do you
Yeah,
know what I mean? And like
he's the real definition of flow, of being in flow.
he's the ultimate personal brand, the ultimate inflow personal brand.
Love
He's
that. Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah.
he's telling stories with real meaning, which are interesting and engaging. He doesn't focus on, I love the thing of, he leaves the 99 to follow the one, to find the one, and
Yeah, yeah,
he,
yeah, yeah,
he
yeah.
he forgives you every time you screw it up. He forgives you every time. He's like, I love you anyway. And I just think that the more that I started to understand this, like this powerful, energetic frequency of love that we call God, and this embodiment of that as a human that we can connect to and resonate with and communicate with in a different way, it just made so much sense. And do you know what? Like my logical brain, my previous logical brain, and I know so many people are so resistant to this stuff because they're like, but does this make sense? And is this, like
Mm,
all I can say is my own experience, like I can only,
100%.
I can only give my own experience. And when I give anything to Jesus, I'm not like, I mean, I have a Bible there. I don't like, I have the Bible app, right? I love the Bible app. Like
Yeah,
I
me
go on
too, me
the app
too.
and it gives me a buzz forward, or I go on TikTok. I'm really good algorithm for God. Like it's full of Jesus on there. I communicate with him like he's a friend that just knows
Mm,
better. And I'm just like, when I have something, I think I should give it to Jesus, or what should I do? And then you get those moments of inspiration and those breadcrumbs. And I think when you follow your flow, when you follow your excitement, that is your breadcrumbs from God saying, this is the path. And you have to release the outcome. You have to just say, I trust you. I'm going to follow what makes me feel
Yeah.
good and follow what I know is my calling, what lights my spirit up, what gives me that just like buzz. And for me, that's doing what I do. And for other people, they would hate what I do and they like to do what they do. I was with my cousin this morning because he's doing a collaboration. He's going to build an app for Amplify. And we were laughing about how different his flow is to my flow, because his stuff is my worst nightmare and my stuff is his worst nightmare. But our flow is so clear. And I believe that if we all follow our flow and we align with that path, we will be able to rebalance this shit show that we're living in as a
Mm.
broader society, which is so out of alignment and so out of flow. So now my goal is to embody flow, to follow Jesus and to share that message, and hopefully drop a little few breadcrumbs from my message that will resonate with others. Because I think we are going through a collective awakening. Like,
What?
we see
Well,
it
absolutely,
like
absolutely.
100%. When you answer that calling and you move through that fear, and you mentioned earlier, you're on that healing journey and you're clearing through the limiting beliefs. And I think I see limiting beliefs as, it's fear. It's just coming from fear. Every time it's
It's
coming from
ego.
fear.
It's ego.
Yeah, it's ego, which is running your life from fear. It's
Mm,
Satan,
mm,
basically. And I believe you
mm.
can live free from fear. I mean, I would say that I still come up against things. I've had a good shift this week, but the speed that I can shift when I find a limiting belief by choosing love over fear, it's like a muscle you exercise. You shift through it and you up level so fast. And
Exactly, exactly.
God rewards you. Like, he's your dad. He wants you to be like
Mm.
so happy. And he's like got all the magic and we're blocking it because we're like, but I've got to do it this way and I need to do it like this and not this and not this. And he's like,
Yeah.
he's
I
literally like,
thought,
do what you love doing, do what you're the best at doing,
yeah,
and I'll take
yeah.
care of the rest. And the more I do that, it's mental. I'm like, this is so magic. This is
Mm.
weird.
Yeah, I talked about this in one of my previous episodes about the five biggest fears that entrepreneurs face. And there's like fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, fear of financial instability, fear of success, and fear of failure. And the conclusion is that all of these fears actually don't come from God, because God, as our Father, He just wants us to experience love. Like, that's all He wants. So
Yeah.
whenever something doesn't feel good in our body, when something feels odd, like anxiety, like fear, it doesn't come from God. And that's what I love what you said. Choose love over fear. And it's something that you have to train. And it's something that I've experienced. Like, I've reconnected with God. I'm growing spiritually, personally. I still have to face my old traumas. I'm working through them. I'm healing. But reconnecting with God and having Jesus as the sphere of, like, of love and unity and compassion and understanding has really, really helped me. So I love that you mentioned that. I was gonna ask you, are you spiritual? But you definitely are. I would love to know, how else do you bring this connection that you have to God to your business? Is this something that you share with your clients? Do you keep it more personal? Do you have some sort of ritual that allows you to, like, stay in flow in your business, like a spiritual ritual? I mean.
In all honesty, no. I don't have a spiritual. I have never resonated with. I like structure. I like
Mm,
routine. I have to practice discipline to keep me on the straight and narrow, but I've never resonated with spiritual rituals and doing something at the same time. Try to honor. I feel like I connect with God by being the best version of myself,
mm,
by choosing to live as he would like me to live, free from
yes.
sin as much as I can, letting go of things, forgiveness, following my flow. And I communicate with him through thought, honestly. I do speak it out. I do say, dear God, if I ever say to someone, I'm going to pray for you, I will do that out loud. So if I've got a friend or a family member that's going through a challenge, or I really want a client to have a specific particular breakthrough, or recently I prayed a lot for my boyfriend as he was going through sort of a kind of an up level that we're bringing up challenge. I will do that out loud. I will always, often when I'm driving, I will thank him, because sometimes I get so
Mm,
like emotional for like the life that I'm living, because it's just my dream life. And I have such a good memory that I can remember how I felt before. I can remember the pain. Sometimes I'll go somewhere and it will remind me. I'll go, I remember coming here when I felt like this, and I'll literally cry because I'm so glad I'm not there anymore, and I'm so grateful to myself and to him for giving me the strength to move through and to be where I am now. So I pray to thank him for my blessings, but really I pray through my mind and thought. I just constantly think about different things, and I do that. So that is my spiritual practice, to be honest. And some people might say
Yeah.
that that's not right, but that really works for me, and I feel really connected to him.
I don't think there's a right or wrong. I actually think that what most people do when it comes to praying, which is kind of like begging in need and scarcity, that is wrong because that is the energy you're putting out. And again,
Yeah,
whatever you, if you believe in God or in the universe, it's all energy and it responds to you with that same energy, right?
yeah,
So when I also pray, like in my day to day I speak with God as a friend as well. Like I'm
yeah,
chatting with him or at night, I always end and start my day by saying thank you.
yeah.
But when I pray for something, I try to pray from a place of gratitude for it has already been done. Right. And Jesus says that pray as if it has been done because it already has or something like that. But I feel that most people always pray from a place of of need, of neediness, of desperation, and
And
that
I
doesn't
think,
work.
well, it works if the thing you're praying for is what you're meant to have.
That's true as well.
That's what's so confusing about it when people are like, manifesting sometimes works and praying sometimes works. And it's like, it will work if that is the thing that is meant for you. But if you're praying for something that is not meant for you, then it won't work because it's not meant for you. And that's why I think manifesting is great. You know, the concept of, embodying the energy of the person that already has the thing that you want to create.
Mm.
But I think that sometimes manifesting can give us a false sense of control over the life that we're meant to have and can push us to choose things that aren't right for us. Yeah, it can work if that's what's meant for you. And there are so many things that I thought I wanted so deeply and I didn't get. And I'm so glad I didn't get them. And I sometimes see other people have them and I'll meet them, in business or whatever. And I hear their life and I think, "Oh, I would hate that. I'm so glad that didn't work out for me." So I think, yeah, I think it can work if it's what's meant for you. But I think praying, thanking for your blessings, because what that does, it raises your energetic vibration. I mean, what we need to do is
Yeah.
just raise our energetic vibration as high as we can. And then the right things will happen to us. And to go back to your question on how do I do this work with my clients, I mean, I'm a very open, honest person. I will always say what feels right to say. So I will talk very openly about God and very openly about Jesus when the time, if it feels right in the context of the moment.
Mm.
I don't have it packaged into my everything. Not everything is, God says this, God says that, because I don't want to alienate people where they are. And I really believe
Mm.
my purpose is to meet people where they are and bring them closer to God. But they might be where I was before, where I'm not quite ready for that, or I've got those limiting beliefs, or, Satan's got me by the balls.
Mm.
So I will always speak very openly and with so much pride for I mean, yeah, for God and for Jesus. And I'm so open about that, even though people will take the piss. People might, people do, particularly when you talk about Jesus more specifically, people can find that crazy. I know there are friends and family members of mine that just
Yeah.
find that so mental, but I'm so fine with that because I've overcome the limiting belief that I need everyone to like me. Like I like me, God likes me, we're good. So I've
100%,
I've
100%.
let
And it's
go of
something so
that.
personal. It's something so personal, right?
Totally. And I think that when you find something, I think the reason that we have the concept of preaching is because when people find something that just fills them up so much and they're so full of love, they want to share that love and they want to push that love on others because they want other people to experience that. But I think that I've understood from trying to do that before that you have to accept that people are on their own journey. And
Yeah.
I love the concept of plant the seed and let God do the rest, because that's what happened to me. There were different people that planted the seed, and gradually, as I healed, God was able to grow that into this beautiful tree. So now I just aim to be authentic, to talk about what feels right for me, plant those seeds, and if that resonates, then that can grow. And sometimes it does with clients and in my business, and sometimes it doesn't. But I just trust that. I trust in his plan. I trust in his timing. That's been a real shift that I've made since I've moved into a state of living in flow, living in what I call performer mode, is trusting his timing.
Yes.
I think
So
that
important.
that's a really big shift to make, is to trust in his timing, not in your own. And
Because it
I've always
always
been a
works out,
very,
right?
It always works out, and it always works out at the right time. I've always been very goal focused. I'm very structured. I'm very,
Mm,
this year I'm doing this quarter I'm
same.
doing this. And that's brought me a lot of peace because control does feel nice. It does feel nice to be in control. And I do think we need control. I think we just need to work out what we can't control. You know, God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Great prayer. Any
Yeah.
addicts,
Yeah, yeah,
any
yeah.
addicts listening will know that the prayer that I say in Narcotics Anonymous, but it's also, you know, the whatever AA, whatever you're going to.
Yeah.
I think that trusting his timing is hard, but I think when
Yeah.
you focus on what puts you in flow, where your flow state is, where you are lost in what you're doing, it might be cooking, it might be creating, it might be doing something online, following that flow and trusting that when you follow that breadcrumb, the next thing will be revealed. Go as far as you can go. When you get there, you can see further. And I think all he wants us to do is be present and enjoy the moment and enjoy the
Mm,
day. And Jesus
mm.
embodied that so beautifully in his very short time on earth. And I think I just try to do that and be present and enjoy every day. And I like the concept, and I didn't make up this concept of waking up and saying today is going to be the best day of my life.
Oh, I love that. I'm gonna start doing it as of tomorrow.
And you never know when the peak of your life is,
True.
right? You never know when the peak is because you can only know in hindsight. So I say to myself, like, this might be the peak. This might be the best my life ever gets. So I really need to enjoy it. So I'm not a wrinkly old lady
Yeah.
looking back and going, oh my God, I wish I'd enjoyed that. I didn't know how lucky I was. So I try to live in that of like, this might be the peak. So I need to really enjoy that and be really grateful for that. And the more that I do that, the more peak seems to unfold. But it's just from a whole different energy. And I think if you're listening to this and you're on your early journey, I think a lot of this stuff can sound really challenging and really triggering. And it really did for me. I was so blocked by all this for so long. I thought it sounded so wishy-washy and oh, she's just lucky and all of that stuff. And I can tell you that I wasn't. I wasn't lucky. If something was going to go wrong, it was going wrong for me, whether that was a relationship or a business or a friendship, or there was so much that would go wrong. You know, I would not get the last parking space. I would not get the last bit of milk on the shelf. You know, it was just, I wasn't lucky. Now I'm incredibly lucky. It all just flows because I embody that energy and that mindset and I show up as that best version of Hannah. And sometimes I don't want to. I do not enjoy doing exercise. I'm not going to lie to you. I do not enjoy doing it. I love walking my dog. I love a little coffee, a little decaf soy flat white, and a Wonder with Bailey and doing my hot girl walk with my steps. I love that. But I really want to have a strong, fit body for my life. And I know that the best version of me would do it. So I do that because that's what she would do. And I do that. If she wouldn't do something, I try my best not to do that. And I don't always achieve it, right? Because we're imperfect, right? The only person that is perfect was Jesus. We're imperfect. So I fall short all the time, but he forgives me every time. And I get back up and I go again and
Mm,
I try to be better. And it's just a really calm way to live. And that's that for me. That's what living in flow is all about, peaceful progress. You're going after your
mm.
goals, you're achieving your dream life, but you are enjoying the journey along the way. And for me, that's, you know, to wrap back to your original question, that for me is what living in flow is. And it's a beautiful journey and experience if you choose to play the game. And I think you have to say, I'm going to play this game, in which case I'm going to take every end of level boss that's going to come for me. And sometimes those bosses, you think you cannot beat them. But when you surrender, that's when you up level. And
Surrender. That's such a beautiful word that
yeah,
many people should really bring into their lives.
but if you
And
don't surrender and you don't let go, eventually he will remove that thing for you because he loves you.
yes, yes. And it does get better when you have something like Jesus or God, or as you said, I don't like pushing my beliefs on other people. I do believe that as long as you have some sort of spiritual belief and believe in like higher power and this source of love, it gets easy. And with this, you start learning how to trust, how to surrender, how to release control, because we all want to control our life. And you said something that's very important. Control is good up to a certain extent, but the things that we want to control in our lives, like the outcomes of situations, I want this relationship, I want this income, I want this business, I want this, I want. It all comes back to things that we haven't healed, right?
For sure. And I think that the thing is with surrender and letting go of control is it's very hard to jump if you don't feel you're wearing a parachute. And I think that's
Mm,
where the faith comes in because God,
exactly.
Jesus, the universe, Allah, whatever your belief is, that's your parachute. But if you don't have that, it's hard to jump. And I can understand that. And I've been there. And when I was trying to understand control, and I was in therapy and I was reading these books and I was trying to understand, how do I let go of control? I get the theory. How do I put it into practice? I never could truly do it until I felt like I had this like lovely floaty parachute that was
Mm.
going to guide me to where I was meant to be. And I think that's why I think it's hard to live your dream life without some form of faith. And as you say, like, I'm not pushing my beliefs on anyone. Everyone can believe whatever they want. I can only share my own experience and plant the seed and let God do the rest.
Exactly, exactly. I have two more questions before we go. This one is a little bit spicy because I know you believe in God, in Jesus, but do you consider yourself a religious person?
It's funny, isn't it? Like religion.
That's why I'm asking it.
I like the concept of relationship over religion.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about
Love that.
relationship, it's not about religion. I don't connect with the institution of religion. Um, because I think that it's been systemized and turned into something that it wasn't meant to be. I mean, if you look at the what the world was like when
Control.
Jesus control. If you look at what the world was like when Jesus came, I mean, he didn't resonate with the way that the religious leaders were running. I mean, they were part of what put him on the cross because they didn't like the fact he was going against what they were saying. And so I wouldn't call myself religious in terms of the traditional definition of a systemized book of rules. I believe in a philosophy and a way of living and an energy of love. And I have a relationship with our creator. And that's what
Mm.
resonates with me. But other people would say, I have a cross necklace and I wear that most days. And when I talk about Jesus, they will say she's religious. And that's okay because that's people, we want to label things so that we can have certainty and control.
Mm.
So I don't mind what people label me, but no, I wouldn't say I am religious. I would say that I'm a passionate follower of Jesus.
Love that. Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'm on the same boat. I actually, from a Catholic background, I left Catholicism when I was very young because of my sexual orientation. Then I came
Yeah.
back to God and Christianity in Bali, and at first it was beautiful. And I honestly, the most beautiful thing I take from that is having built this new relationship with God and loving Jesus as well, admiring him for all the things that he did and he still does. But religion per se, I feel Christianity is still very controlling and it's still very following like these rules that the Bible's like, if you don't live your life by the Bible, then you are a sinner and you're going to hell. And I don't
And I
resonate with
think
that.
no, and I think what's really and I hate that you've had that experience, and I really don't resonate with that. One thing I studied in my I did a law degree. One thing that I found so unbelievably crazy when I was studying the law was how open to interpretation words are. So
Yes.
you can have a law that is written, right, on paper, this is the law, but one judge can apply this and one judge can apply this, and this person goes free and this person goes to jail for the rest of their life because of the
Mm-hmm.
interpretation of words. And we like to live in a world of absolutes, of rules, because it gives us certainty and it gives us a perception of control. And
Control again.
exactly. And words are so open to interpretation. And I found that really hard when I was studying the law when I was young, because I used to get so frustrated and really upset because I would be like, but that doesn't make sense. But then you would see how that could happen. And when you study the law, all you learn is this is the law and these are all the exceptions. I think with the Bible, it's open to interpretation and it's interpreted
Yeah.
by people that are not living in the energy of love. They're interpreting it from the energy that they're living in. So if you're living in the energy of fear, you're going to see the world through the energy of fear.
Mm-hmm.
If you're living the energy of love, you're going to see the world. So somebody who's living the energy of fear, who reads the Bible, could read something and say it's a sin to be gay, and someone else could read it and see that it is not a sin to be gay at all, right?
Mm.
The way that our system is made up of, because we live in a predominantly low vibrational fear-based world, because Satan has control over our current, unfortunately, system. It's being applied, and people are seeing themselves as sinners and wrong, and that they're going to hell, when there's no way that Jesus, if you look at the stories in the Bible, there is no way. Jesus always, he never chose the person that on paper was the one that would be
Mm.
seen as the perfect one, because he loved us all individually. And I feel so sad when I hear, people that are gay or anything that doesn't align perfectly with his, and it's awful what you go through and how much, and
Mm.
that's just Satan keeping you from the energy of love. I'm so
Mm.
glad that you've been on that journey and that you've healed that to get back to that state, because Jesus and God adore you.
Yeah, I
it doesn't
truly
matter about all of that stuff. It just doesn't matter about that. It matters about who you are and what you're bringing to the world. Why would it matter like who you love? It
yeah.
matters that
And that
you
you're
love.
exactly that you love and that you're living your life like Christ, loving, compassionate, understanding, in unity. That's really all that matters. And that's what really, like, if you want to summarize the Bible, at least the New Testament, because the Old Testament, I don't like it. But I'll actually, open parenthesis, as you mentioned, is open to interpretations. I've started studying the Bible from a metaphysical standpoint, and it's fascinating. So I've just finished reading Genesis, whole Genesis from a metaphysical standpoint, and there's so many symbolisms and
Yeah, that'd
it's
be so
yeah, yeah,
interesting. I'd love to
mind
do
blowing,
that. Yeah.
mind blowing. But anyways, I was saying is that what matters is that we follow Jesus's principles and live our lives in a Christ-like way. That's all that matters. But yeah, people just want to use it to control, and especially religion want to keep people living in fear so that they can be controlled. But anyways, I want to ask you a last question before we wrap it up. What would you say to someone who feels like they've lost themselves after a personal storm?
Someone who's lost themselves after a personal storm.
Look for Jesus. I'm joking.
Start with a lot of self-love and self-compassion and forgiveness. And that's really hard to do. All this stuff is
It's
so
hard.
easy to say and it's so much harder to
Mm,
do. But
mm.
I find writing lists really helpful for self-love and self-compassion and just forcing myself to look at things I like about myself and things I'm proud of.
That's great. Yeah.
I think starting with that, make that list. Even if the list isn't long, you'll find that when you look at one thing, you'll find another. And you just keep doing that until you start to shift into that compassion and that forgiveness.
Mm,
And I would start with that. And I would reflect on why I'm in that lost situation, like what's actually happened. Is it what's pushed you into that situation, and understand that, because there's lessons in everything. And then I would
true.
honestly fill your life with flow. Fill your life,
Mm,
whatever excites you the most. Do as much of that as you can, and not in a dreamer or an achiever way where you're chasing something or you want to do something because you think it's going to make you look better. Think about what you would love to do if no one else was watching, if there was no outcome from it and you just did it for the pure joy of doing it.
mm.
Do that.
I love
Do as
that.
much
Love
of that
that.
as you can, and realign. There's something so amazing about being lost and starting again, because you have a blank slate. You can do it
Mm,
differently this time, and
beautiful.
doing it from a place of flow and from love, and do things, love, be around people that you love. Just fill
Mm,
yourself with love, self-love, love of your work, love of your craft, love of cooking, love of people. And then it just works out, because when we follow love,
yeah.
it does all just work out. And it sounds so cheesy, and I don't know
But
if
it's
I would
true.
always listen to that, but
Love is the answer.
it is the answer. And I think, if we think about this as a business podcast, the more that you can do work you love, work with people that you love, be in places that you love, use software that you love, like,
Mm,
the more you can do that, the more the whole thing just starts working. Do marketing strategies that you love, find platforms that you love. I just go with, like, do
100%.
do I love this? No. Okay. Do I
Yeah.
hold on, why not? Like, why not? And is it a limiting belief? Is there a blocker? Would that Hannah do this? Like, for example, I don't love filming video content, right? I love, and this is very specific now, but I love doing this. I love talking on podcasts like this. I love to write. I despise to record like talking head short form. I despise it. So I
Yeah, I
don't do it.
remember you mentioned that in our conversation
I
two
hate
years
it.
ago.
I hate it. I hate it so much. And so I do what I love, and it works because I'm filling myself with what I love. So you have to always go for the path of what you love, and the rest will unfold.
Mm,
But if you're living in a state of fear or guilt or shame, that can feel so alien to you. So
mm.
just make a small shift.
Yeah, love, love, love. And I've noticed this in your content that you found your flow and you're doing more static content or like the maybe shorter videos where you don't have to speak. And since you found that flow, it's working really well for you. So you're not having to perform, you're not having to put so much effort into it because it's flowing, it's working. And another thing that I wanted to point out is that when you mentioned of having compassion for ourselves, something that I've learned is that when we go through storms, whether that is because of a fear or a trauma, it always comes down to our inner child. So it always helps me like feel compassionate, not so much about adult Juan, which yes, I am compassionate for myself, but I feel more compassionate for the little boy that was hurt, that felt abandoned, that felt rejected. And it makes it a little bit different where when you can have compassion for that, you know, that inner child, it really helps to bring you back into like a loving state.
I love that.
Yeah.
I think that the inner child work, and I think that's something
Mm.
really interesting about when you picture yourself as a child, how much easier it is to show compassion, because
Yeah.
we find it easier to show compassion to children than adults.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes that's the best place to start with
Yeah.
self-compassion, is just imagining
Mm.
yourself as like a 5-year-old, and how would you treat that
Mm.
5-year-old? Because we're
Mm.
way too comfortable in modern society, because we're taught to. The capitalist system thrives on us hating ourselves.
Mm.
We're taught to hate ourselves. We're
Mm.
taught that loving yourself is arrogant, is egotistical,
Mm.
yeah, is not a good thing. We're taught that confidence and self-love makes you an asshole, when
Mm.
in reality it's the reverse. And the more I love myself, the more I'm able to give to others. The more full my cup is, the more cups I'm able to fill. But we empty ourselves and we destroy ourselves in the name of what? None of it really, when you really think about it, none of it makes sense. It's just that we don't take the time to think about it because we're too busy numbing ourselves with all the other stuff that we're told to numb ourselves with. Because
Yeah.
we're led by people, and we reward people in our society that are not doing the best for humanity, that are not doing the best for individuals. And that's the same with social media. Your content will go viral, it will tick certain boxes, it will go viral because that's what people think that people want or whatever. But we are seeing a shift in that, and we are seeing an awakening and a rising. And I'm just so
And I
excited
love
for where
that.
the world is going. And I'm so glad that I was born now. I think this is the best time to be alive
To
by
be
far.
alive.
I cannot believe how lucky I am. And recently I've given so much gratitude to the men and the women that came before me, who suffered, who cried, who pushed to
Mm.
get to the point where I am able to live the life I'm able to live. And I think we complain so much about technology, and we demonize technology, and we say this and these phones and this, but oh my gosh, if you step back and you look at what is possible, it is insane. We are living in a magical time. It is
Mm.
insane, especially for women, especially for
Mm.
women. And I just think when we start to focus on that, like, it's just insane. It's just, we're so
Yeah.
lucky. We're so lucky.
So lucky, so lucky. We have to be grateful for that. And I think most of us forget to acknowledge that before us came so many people that had to suffer so much so that we can actually be living these incredible lives. But yeah, Hannah, this was such an incredible conversation. I
I've
enjoyed
loved
every
it.
single moment of it. So many gold nuggets. Thank you for sharing your stories, your vulnerabilities. Before we go, where can people find you?
The best thing for me is to go to performermode.com if you've liked this stuff and join the newsletter. I send an email out every Friday all about getting people into flow. That is the best place to find me, performermode.com. You can find me on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Hannah I Power. But if you're interested in this stuff, that's like the place where I'm putting my newest learnings, my most up-to-date
Love
learnings,
that.
the stuff that's going on in my mind right now in terms of the fastest and easiest way to shift into that state of flow.
I'll make sure to add that link and then your link to the links to your social media on the show
Perfect.
notes and on the description on of the video on YouTube. And thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Again, it was a pleasure. I will see you very, very soon. And thank you guys for staying with us. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye.